2017, the Libertarian Union was formed. Finally, the average Joe Libertarian could find a thriving community of independent podcasters and content providers, all in one convenient location. At Libertarian Union, we'll always have the latest news, interviews, discussions, and even movie reviews. With hundreds of episodes and more added all the time, you'll always find something fresh at libertarianunion.com.
Hey everyone, it's Daniel and Robert, The Last Nighters, and The Last Nighters is part of the Launchpad Media, where we're always launching new ideas in your direction. There's a whole slate of shows, new ones coming out every day, different providers, different content, music, news, entertainment, libertarian philosophy, law, and movie reviews, which is what we do here at The Last Nighters. You can find all of that and more at thelaunchpadmedia.com, to borrow from some old internet commercial during the .com days, I think. Forget what that was.
That?
I want to say it was Expedia, maybe?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Expedia.com.
Well, then wasn't it also Amazon? Amazon.com?
I don't know.
No, that was another thing, but that was a bit for a while when people didn't know what Amazon was.
Right. And then there was a car commercial back when we were in college that I want to say it wasn't Volkswagen. It was something similar. Maybe Kia, maybe not. But it was like /.com all day long. Like /.com all day long.
I think that's more recent than that. I think that was more like
it was in college.
Really?
We were living on the lake house.
No, and there's like somebody works in cyberspace. Something /.com all day long. Yeah.
Beautiful stuff.
Johnny works in cyberspace, and then Jesse works in blah, blah, blah. That was 20 years ago?
I know, right? It's
Get
amazing.
Out of here.
By the way, this is episode 47, and we are talking about Wreck-It Ralph tonight. So we are going to go back because it is a bit of a nostalgic movie, kind of harkening back to the Donkey Kong, Super Mario kind of era of video games, but then also mixing it up with some cutting edge like Halo, Kill 'Em All, first person shooter shit. And then the Gaudi inspired Sugar Rush Land speed racer kart racing game, which is kind of this is a fun story, I think. And so we'll get into it. But before that, I want to let you know that this show is coming out on Monday, Cyber Monday. There are still some deals out there for you, like Tom Wood's Liberty Classroom. Bluehost might still be having their lowest prices of the year. The Tuttle Twins book series might still be having their best prices of the year. So do check it out at lastnighters.com/deals. We got a landing page with all the stuff. If you buy on our links, you will be supporting the show. You will keep the lights on here. And also, you'll get good stuff as a part of the deal. So, everyone wins. It's mutually beneficial trade. That's what's happening here. And more than one person gets improvement. You both do, and so do we. So it's like a three-way. Yeah. So, episode 47, lastnighters.com/47. Here's the Google description for Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph came out 2012. It's a fantasy science fiction movie. Says it's listed at 2 hours here. 7.7 on the IMDb, 72% Metacritic, 87% Rotten Tomatoes, and 95% of the Google users like it. The description is, arcade game character Wreck-It Ralph, played by John C. Reilly, is tired of always being the bad guy and losing to his good guy opponent, Fix-It Felix, played by Jack McBrayer. Finally, after decades of seeing all the glory go to Felix, Ralph decides to take matters into his own hands. He sets off on a game-hopping trip to prove that he has what it takes to be a hero. However, while on his quest, Ralph accidentally unleashes a deadly enemy that threatens the entire arcade. Directed by Rich Moore, this is a Disney/Pixar effort, I believe, right? Is this a Pixar one or just straight Disney?
I believe this is just straight Disney, but this is after Disney bought Pixar, so
it's all kind of mashed together a little bit.
Yeah, like John Lasseter, I believe, is like a co-executive producer or an executive director or something like that. I mean, it's all taking place there.
Right, yeah. It's all in that same little universe. So the director is Rich Moore, and this has got the most annoying person in the world who happens to not have a penis, Sarah Silverman, and her counterpart, who is also almost equally annoying, who happens to have a penis, is Ben Shapiro. And they are almost the same person if you were just hearing their voice.
Okay. But you're saying that Ben Shapiro's in this movie?
No, but he might as well have been.
Okay.
And then John C. Reilly, of course, the great Ed O'Neill from Married with Children is in this one.
What character did he play?
He was the owner of the arcade.
Huh. Okay.
Very, very, 3 or 4 lines.
Tiny role.
Tiny role. Much. And then the great Alan Tudyk is, of course, King Candy, doing his best Mad Hatter impression. and Mindy Kaling is in this, and a few others. But based on what I've told you so far, Google description and all that, what's your opening salvo, Robert?
Well, it was fun to watch this. I mean, yeah, the Google description is fairly accurate, I would say. It's a complex film, actually. It's fun. The way it merges like the retro and the new at the time, and the different play styles and the different arcade games bumping into each other and how those characters would interact with each other and all of that. It's a lot of fun. And if you take it at face value and watch the movie from start to finish, it makes sense all up until like the last 30 seconds of the credits. And we wouldn't have known this unless I bumped into a video online on the tubes that broke it down, but it completely ruins the character for me. The main character becomes an idiot that doesn't make any sense, which is okay. I mean, it's voiced by John C. Reilly. It's a video game character. How smart really is he? But at the beginning of the movie, he tells us that he's a bad guy. He tells the audience that. All the other characters in the game tell us that. And never once does John C. Reilly's character, Ralph, ever suggest that he was ever in the right, that he was ever wronged. It's just that he's a bad guy and he wants to be a good guy now because he's tired of being a bad guy. So he wants to go get this medal because for some reason that signifies that he's going to be a good guy now because of this birthday party that he went to, that he kind of crashed, and they were putting a medal on Felix. And he's like, well, good guys get medals, not bad guys. He's like, well, if I had a medal, then you'd have to see that I'm good too. It's some kind of like fourth grade logic. So in that sense, I guess I'm giving him a pass for being completely idiotic. And not to spoil the ending, but it is revealed, because this is the theme I want to run through. This is like the main issue I think it takes to really understand what's happening in this movie. But it gets revealed that he was just chilling one day on his land, and then some people came along and claimed eminent domain. It's revealed in the little song at the very end that his land was stolen through eminent domain.
Yeah, and I'll note it's the third song in the credits. It's the last song, like when they're doing the, like this is based on fictional characters kind of portion of the credits.
Yeah, it's like the very, very end, like after all this is where the dog handlers are like giving credit, and like California and Georgia are thanked or whatever.
Yeah, and what kind of lenses they used.
Right. So you have to watch the entire, and then that, if anybody knows about eminent domain, and that's what I think we're going to talk about a fair amount on the show, but if you Google eminent domain, what you get is the right of a government or its agent to expropriate private property for public use with payment of compensation. In other words, it's the right of a gang, of a collective, to come along and force you to sell your property to them. Well, it's not even selling. It's just, we're going to do this. We're going to take this. And then, oh, by the way, here's some money. See, we're not terrible people. We're just going to, this is a completely legitimate thing. And there's a bunch of things I want to say about this. And I'm sorry, Daniel, I'm just going to run my mouth for a little bit here.
It's what you do best. It's why you're here.
It is why I'm here. So if you're going to say that people have individual rights and the right to private property, well, if another gang can just come along and take that property and say, here's some money, then what's the point of having that individual right or even claiming that you protect individual rights? I mean, this is the story that we get all the time from statists, that governments are necessary to protect individual rights, protect property rights. But yet, not only does government betray that constantly by forcing you to pay taxes or coming along and stealing your property through asset forfeiture seizure, declaring some set of money illegal or your house illegal, or, this bike committed a crime or this car was used in a crime and therefore it's illegal. So we're going to steal this. And then nobody bats an eye at it. They're like, well, a drug dealer, this is like a drug dealer auction. So it was all the stuff that the state took in, X, Y, and Z crimes. And so therefore they have a right to steal it. Anyway, I don't want to get off down that horrific tangent, but the excuse always given is for eminent domain or asset forfeiture, mostly eminent domain. It's like if you watch the movie Little Pink House, where they were going to take the house, take the land, and then they were going to give it like a private company to build a building there, and they never ended up doing that. But anyway, the excuse is always to like, well, we need to build a highway through here or whatever.
Right. We talked about that on our Cars episode. If people want to go and look at that, there was a documentary called Divided Highways. It talked about the interstate highway system and how it was built and how the land was basically taken from people as a result. So it ties right into all this.
Right. And that's probably the most common use of this, is that they just declare, well, we need to widen the road a little bit. So we're just going to take, another 10 feet of your land or another 20 feet of your land. It happens a lot. And other times they'll just say, well, we're building this whole road right through your land and there's nothing you can do about it. And so here's some money, even though it completely screws you over. The problem, of course, besides theft, is that whenever you say you're doing this for the greater good, like this is for the collective benefit of the whole, you are essentially saying that, well, we can steal anything for any reason, because anybody's interpretation of what the collective greater good is entirely subjective, and anything can become an excuse. And then why even have individual liberties at all? So anyway.
YARP, the greater good. Harkening back to our Hot Fuzz episode. See, I'm tying it all together here, buddy.
Oh, nice callbacks, Daniel. So anyway, if Ralph was just chilling one day and along come some people with some paperwork saying, this is now ours, this land is now our land. Now you have to go live in that brick pile, or at least, not on your land anymore. And we're going to build up this apartment building. At no point during the movie does he ever say, yeah, they kicked me off my land. They stole my land and the only thing I can do is live over here on this bricks now. All we get is, I'm Ralph and I'm a bad guy and I smash things and blah, blah, blah. No, you're not. You're the good guy. If you're kicked off this land and they come in and they build up an apartment building, what he's doing, and maybe it's not the best idea to smash the building that people are living in at the time, but you are evicting people from your land. You have a right to forcibly eject people from your land that you rightfully own. Now, I wouldn't say that, he should go and threaten their lives, but I mean, what other choice does he have? They think he's a bad guy, and he's apparently been brainwashed into thinking he's a bad guy. I don't know. I want to get your take on all this, Daniel.
Well, there's so many ways to take all of this, but I'll try to break it down into a couple of different areas. Number one is, you said that he's not the brightest guy around, and I would tend to agree with you. So I wonder if he's the type of person who would be easily manipulated and start believing what he's told, like, oh, you're the bad guy. I'm the bad guy. I guess I'm the bad guy. So they're, able to manipulate him into becoming the character they want him to be, or program him, if you will. Because remember, this is a video game, right? So this is like the whole NPC thing. He is programmed to be the bad guy. The fact that there's this eminent domain situation and this backstory is not really material to the game itself, but it is in the story of the movie. And so I find it a bit of going a bit beyond, like, if he's just programmed to be the Donkey Kong of the game, and Fix-It Felix is the Mario of the game, and that's like end of story, then you don't need this eminent domain situation. You don't need him being manipulated into thinking he's the bad guy. But because they have, it's like a Disney movie, they've got lives outside of, when someone's not dropping 8 quarters into the game. Inflation, by the way. What games take 8 quarters, man? That seems insane. But
yeah, the ones today, I mean, arcades aren't a thing anymore. They've been outcompeted by home consoles and now mobile gaming, but yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the prices have become astronomical, apparently. And not only that, but like the inconvenience of 8 quarters going in, Like it's not like you can put the Sacagawea dollars in, I don't think. I mean, I don't even know. But back to what I was talking about. So if you take it outside of just, he's programmed to be the bad guy, Felix is programmed to be the good guy, within the confines of the game, you don't even need the eminent domain story, which, by the way, they actually do telegraph that in the very opening, where he's got his stump and then they bulldozer and move him onto the brick pile. You don't get the lyrics until the third song of the credits that explains why and what, and actually uses the terms eminent domain. But you see it in the very opening of the movie. Now, if you add that into it, and then he's kind of a dim-witted guy, then I can see him sort of believing what he's told. Like, oh, you are the bad guy, therefore you're the bad guy, and you're the bad guy. And he goes, I'm the bad guy, all that. I think I feel like I'm repeating myself here, and I'm sure that I am.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, like you said, he's programmed to be the bad guy. Their job, if you will, is to act out this game so that they don't get turned off. So that they maintain, they're celebrating their 30th anniversary. They're
there to entertain people. That's their job.
They're actors on a stage. So, I mean, how far we want to go down the reality of the whole situation is kind of funny. But, this is what we do here. Now, there are some other interesting points later in the movie. Are there points you want to hit before I get to it? Because the next one I really want to talk about is the glitch Ralph contract, but I'm sure there might be something you want to talk about before that.
Well, I do have, the whole idea of they are actors on the stage, but even after that, you've got Ralph still feeling like, hey, it's been 30 years. I've never got the medal. So he wants that validation. He wants to be the good guy, and he wants to be socially accepted. Like, he's been suffering ostracism for 30 years. And it's very, very powerful, very obvious in this movie that he's not a part of this group. They're very reluctant to even let him in during this 30th anniversary party, of which he is the main, factor of the game. He's not even invited to it. So that just goes to show you that social pressures are super powerful and a very effective market-based tool for writing behavior. And we've talked about this in the past. And then also his comment about Fix-It Felix coming up and using a magic hammer. And he does this like offhand comment, like, how hard could it be? He's got a magic hammer. It's like no effort on his part to like do any of this stuff. So it's really all for show, right? It's all entertainment, actors on a stage, programming. But I feel like Ralph has sort of identified as his actor portrayal.
Yeah, I think in order for us to, as an audience, to really be on board with what the movie's all about, we have to identify him as the protagonist with his own agency and not just as an actor playing a part. I mean, you have to be on board with his emotional hurt to be on board with his quest for redemption and to get the medal. Now, I had issue with some of his actions he took, so I'm wondering how you felt about him. As the protagonist, I support his quest for validation, even if it is this arbitrary, superficial thing of getting this medal, which even if you showed up with this medal, you're like, hey, I got a medal. And they're like, great, how did you do it? Who gave you that medal? Oh, no, I snuck into this machine and took it. Okay. Does that mean prove you're a good guy?
Yeah.
I don't really think it does. You stole, okay, and this is the story he has to tell, right? He goes, well, okay, I was at a bar, and then this drunk soldier guy stumbled by me, and he knocked himself out, so I stole his armor, and then I impersonated him in his game, and then I snuck into this tower where normally the player gets to at the very end of the game, and just stole the medal. Aren't I the greatest?
Well, this goes back to him being, kind of this simpleton, right? Where the medal is a symbol to him, and all he needs to do is attain that symbol to get the reward, the accolades that go along with it. And I would liken this a little bit to Paul Krugman getting the Nobel Prize, because as soon as he has that, then everyone listens to him, even though he's been wrong like 9 out of 10 times on everything that he says.
Yeah, that's a good likeness.
Right. I have a question for you before we move on, because it's related to his opening narrative here. He says, it's hard to love your job when nobody seems to like you for doing it. So my question to you is, do you recall a video that Steph Molyneux made about 2 years ago that said cops need to be supported by the public in order to do what they do? Sub-question, Mises and I think even Rothbard made the point that governments can only remain in power so long as they can maintain the illusion or having the people supporting them being in power. So run with that.
I believe that Molyneux video was his breakup video with libertarianism. Is that correct?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, so he really went off the rails there. And yeah, he was talking about, there was a big crime spree, I believe, in St. Louis at the time. There were like I don't know if this is the Michael Brown time or whatever, but there were a lot of like riots. And he made some bizarre claim about how you need to publicly, and he's talking to libertarians. He was saying that libertarians had blood on their hands if they didn't publicly support the cops, and that their public support was the only way that cops could actually do their jobs and prevent crime. And this is the same man who has likened cops to crime detectives, crime historians. I mean, what prevents 99.99% of all crime is social pressures.
Like ostracism?
Ostracism. It's the idea that I would consider myself a bad person. It's the idea that your mom would consider you a bad person, that your friends would frown on what you do. The idea that, well, now you got to hide your loot or whatever. I mean, all kinds of things that you can't just be out and open about. Unlike a politician who can just rob you and like smile and wave at the cameras at the same time. The crook is a little more honest about it. And he knows he feels shame about it. And they don't necessarily brag on Instagram about all the stuff they've stolen. Some do, but most don't. So anyway, where was I going with that?
Well, and then the second part, was, do you think that governments really do need to have sort of the support or at least the compliance or placation of the populace to get away with what they do and maintain power? Sort of like
They
the
govern with the consent of the people.
yeah, or like the apathy of the people, even.
But that's the claim is that they operate with the will of the governed or whatever, the consent of the governed.
Well, that's the fantasy. I mean,
right.
We're now getting into fantasy. We've been talking about a video game that comes to life at night, but now we're getting into fantasy territory.
Right, where the people actually support their own enslavement. Well, they do. I would completely agree. The only way to essentially move on from the statist system is for people to just walk away and stop supporting it. The idea that you're going to have some sort of violent revolution, well, that's just another person that wanting their turn at the controls. There's never been a revolutionary who is like takes over and then is like just walks away and is like, and done. See, and we just stop. It's always takes over and then now I'm going to show you how to really rule people. I was just watching some documentaries on Stalin, and he made an interesting claim. The guy that was speaking, actually, it was an interview with a guy who I swear sounds and looks just like Joe Pesci, but he's like not Joe Pesci. He's a historian.
So his name is not Joe Pesci?
His name is not Joe Pesci, and I recommend you check him out. I couldn't tell you a name to actually Google or anything. It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters. He seems like a pretty smart guy.
Well, where do you find this documentary? Is it YouTube, Netflix?
It was on the tubes, and it wasn't a documentary. It was an interview. It's an interview series. I think he wrote a series of books. It's like Stalin, Rise to Power, Stalin Waiting for Hitler, and there's a series of interviews with the guy. All
right, if you remember it, send it to me, and I'll put it on the show notes page at lastnighter.com/47.
Okay, it's Steven something, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so they were talking about Stalin, and usually the claim is, well, Stalin just had this lust for power, and that's why he was such a tyrant and took over control and blah, blah, blah. What this guy is saying is that he's gone through and read all their Politburo and all their inside notes and like all the stuff they're talking about during closed meetings, all the minutes of their private group meetings. And these people were just true believer communists. Like if they're talking about the proletariat and the bourgeoisie out in open, they're talking about the proletariat and the bourgeoisie when they're hanging out, drinking a beer. They're true believer communists. And the fact is that Stalin wasn't just a sociopathic tyrant. He was a true believer in communism. He was really trying to make the system work as best he could. And that he saw when people didn't toe the line that they had to go because he believed that was the way to the best possible world. So really, it's an indictment, I believe, of communism. It's not just saying that, well, it's just Stalin was a bad guy. He was really trying to institute true communism.
This is interesting because it sounds like he's making the greater good argument.
He was, yeah, absolutely.
And that dissenters and people not towing the line were impediments to the greater good, and therefore he was proclaiming eminent domain over their life.
Exactly what he was doing. For the greater good, these people need to be removed or eliminated for the great society to be obtained. He was a true believer. He wasn't just a psychopathic, sociopathic tyrant guy. He was doing what he did because he believed it. He believed himself to be the good guy.
And there were plenty of people following orders.
And there were plenty of people that also were believers in the party, true believers, and willing to follow out orders once he, pointed the finger at the people that had to go.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. That all ties together. And I have another note about Ralph wanting to win the medal, and it sort of ties into this. He wants that medal to prove that he's good and to get out of the terrible living situation that he finds himself in. And when I saw that, I was thinking that's why a lot of people might join the military. If they're living in rough areas with very little prospects, like regulations and high minimum wages and union legislation and things like that are preventing them from getting a job and improving their lives on their own. They're going to run into some recruiter somewhere who's promising them all this stuff. Says they will join up here, we'll give you a bonus and GI Bill, pay you for college, we'll train you, we'll do all the stuff, fly you around the world, and that seems like you're proving your worth to society into this area that gets all this respect, right? We just had Veterans Day, which used to be Armistice Day, which actually was meaningful. It was a day of peace, the war or the day of the war to end all wars ending. It's supposed to be like a monumental thing about not killing each other, but now it's been subverted. Anyway, I digress. But I see his quest to get a medal like that in a very militarized game, right? Whatever the game is called with Jane
Bug Hunt,
Lynch.
I think. Or no, it's Hero's Medal.
Hero's medal. Yeah. That's him joining the military to get that respect, to win that medal, to make something of himself, to improve his situation. And it's a false promise, right? Like we see that in the movie. Like he's just going to go there to steal the medal, basically. And then when he gets into Candyland, it gets stolen from him. So property rights are kind of a big deal in this movie.
Yeah. What did you think about that? I mean, Sarah Silverman steals it so that she can enter this race, but Ralph is like, hey, that's mine. And at first it seems like, well, she's just stealing it for no reason. But then we find out that she wants to, but who cares what your intended use is? Like, even if I'm going to rob you and I stick a gun in your face and you give me your $20 and then I walk away and it's like, oh, don't worry about it, I'm donating this to charity. Is that going to make you feel better?
Well, that's taxes. But I think this situation is more akin to, I've got a great tip on a race and I'm going to steal your money. I'm going to bet on the horses. And when I win, I'm going to pay you back your money.
Yeah.
And even if you win, and even if you pay me back, you're still a stealer. You're still a thief, right? You still stole, even if you do repay it, because you did it against my permission. You did not have my consent to do this. My body, my money, my choice, right?
Right. But Sarah Silverman did not see it that way. She was like, hey, I was going to give it back to you once I won the race. I don't see what the big deal is. Jeez, what are you upset about?
Yeah. So, that's not a good lesson for the kids.
Not a good lesson for the kids, Daniel.
I know. My kids did watch this and they did enjoy it. And by the way, we're doing this because the new movie, Ralph Breaks the Internet, is out in theaters now. I don't know if we mentioned that earlier, but this is timely.
Okay, so then there's another interesting point where he's chasing after her. She has grabbed his medal and he's chasing after her. And he's getting covered in candy as he's running after her. But he catches up to her at the race. And while he's chasing after, he starts smashing up the grandstands. He's turning them over and people are getting thrown away and all that sort of thing. And then King Candy comes on the microphone and is like, don't worry, folks, we'll fix all this up. Don't worry about it. But it sure seems like it's Sarah Silverman who's the fault for this damage. I mean, who would you put this damage at the feet of? Who is responsible for paying back and fixing this damage?
Wow. So I'm trying to remember exactly what you're talking about, because if Ralph is chasing her, but then using wanton disregard for other people's property and lives, then that's kind of on him. Like, he's going above and beyond what is proportional to the aggression against him. Like, if he's going to go around murdering people and destroying random people's property to try to get his medal back from someone who stole from him, that's a bit too far.
Okay, too far for Daniel. All right. But what...
I mean, sure, she initiated this situation. And I think, I think in legal terms, like if someone's like robbing a 7-Eleven and then someone gets shot, even in someone's acting in self-defense and accidentally shoots a bystander, it's still the perpetrator's fault, even if the defender accidentally shot someone, because they committed the initial crime that set the events in motion. Right.
So that also is protection for the cops who chase after somebody in like a high-speed chase. And so then they're chasing after someone in a high-speed chase, but then the cops like crash into other people, other innocent people. That damage is placed at the foot of the person they're chasing.
And I think that also would be going a bit too far. Like, you're putting other people at risk. Like, there's a certain like balance, I would imagine, of what is the risk of if this person gets away versus what is the potential harm that you're putting all these people at risk.
Right.
Like as far as your standard operating procedure or your programming, right? Because in Hero's Duty, when Ralph's going kind of AWOL or turbo, they call it, they say, stick to the program.
So then back to my original question, you would put some of the blame on Ralph and then some of the blame on Glitch? Is it a 50-50? I mean, I'm just gauging your opinion here. I'm not asking you to be the judge, jury.
Well, I think that he could have caught up to her without destroying and potentially murdering people. So, yeah, I think that was a bad choice on his part.
Okay. So how much is her fault and how much is his fault? Is it all his fault? Is he supposed to just stand back and say, okay, you can go ahead and hide underneath these grandstands forever? I just can't seem to get at you.
Well, I don't know. Man. It's a video game / movie,
And you don't want to judge it? That's fine.
When did video games become so violent and scary? Come on.
Forever ago. Some of the very first video games. All asteroids? Right, I don't know. You're just like shooting asteroids, blowing things up all the time.
Well, flattery, don't charge these batteries, civilian. All right, I wanted to ask you, the random security check in the surge protector, the TSA style check, and did you bring any fruit back?
Mm-hmm.
They're profiling him, right? Like, that's sort of the joke.
Yes, but he's terrible at his job because he obviously doesn't see the cherries that he's holding behind his back.
Right, and lets him go, and then he gives it to the poor begging Cubert characters.
Yes.
Which I thought that would be sentimental for you because I remember your old man playing Cubert all the time.
Oh, this whole movie is full of sentimental stuff. I don't remember all the references now, but yeah, there were all kinds of fun little references and nods to old video games. So much, I mean, like in the bad guy support group.
I loved that. That was awesome. Zangief and Satine.
You had them, and then you had what's his name from Mortal Kombat with a metal arm and face and stuff. He was like ripping people's heads off. Hearts out. Kano?
Kano? Okay. And a zombie.
Yeah, you had all kinds of fun stuff. So it's a big nostalgia trip. I wonder if the kids that are watching it today have any idea who these characters are. Probably not, but maybe some. So let's talk about the contract. It's one of the main things I wanted to talk about. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about, Daniel?
No, enlighten me.
Okay, so Glitch asks for Ralph's help, and Ralph agrees, but he doesn't know what he's agreeing to. But she says, I need you to smash something. Help me out, and then I'll help you out, basically, is what the contract that they forge. And it turns out that she wants him to help her break into a bakery. And as soon as he realizes what he's being asked to do, he balks. He's like, whoa. You just want me to break into somebody's private property? And she's like, you can't back out now. We shook on it. And my point is, hell yes, you can back out now. That contract was immediately invalid as soon as it was formed because it involved the property of a third party whose consent you did not obtain. So in order for a contract to be valid, all parties with property involved need to agree to it.
Except for the social contract, Robert. I just want to bring up a big exception to your argument here.
Daniel's joking. Daniel is joking. Yes. So you're right. Yeah.
If you don't like it, leave.
It's on me to leave. So anyway, she acts as if the contract were valid, and Ralph, being the simpleton, was like, oh, okay, I guess we shook on it, so I guess I have to do this now. Now I have to, commit this crime and destroy this property, which is not the case. Yeah, he was dumb to agree to it before he understood all the terms of the contract, but once he learns that it involves the destruction of a third party's property, he can back out.
But she knows that he's willing to do that already because he did that with the grandstands.
True. Yeah.
He's hiring a mercenary here.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't care. Maybe it's just all about smashing other people's stuff.
He's going to wreck it. That's what he's good at.
Well, it is established that he wrecks other people's stuff. But, when that people's stuff is on your property, I think you have a right to wreck it. How you like them apples?
Maybe to an extent. It sort of reminds me of rent control buildings where they don't let you increase the rent. So the landowner stops making improvements, and then they are considered slumlords. But why would they make improvements on property if they actually do want to incentivize people to leave because they're underpaying? Like the landlord's not making any money as a result of renting up these government-enforced prices. You follow me? It's one of my big gripes with the otherwise brilliant show Daredevil on Netflix, because they make the land or the property owner, the slumlords, the most evil person in the world. Because in the court cases with Murdoch, he's like going after with all these little old ladies who are getting kicked out of their homes where the water doesn't work and the heat doesn't work and all that stuff. Yeah, that's a terrible situation, but that's because of government intervention, screwing up what people can do with their own property.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They force the prices so low that, the rent owners can't make any money and can't afford to maintain those buildings, and they get vilified in the press and on TV shows as being these horrific people when, you're right, it's government intrusion into the market.
Right. And then the whole reason that the prices are going up is with a supply and demand situation. So you've probably got government elsewhere fucking everything up by preventing new housing from coming on the market with zoning laws and other restrictions.
Yeah, people like rent control when it's benefiting them. They're in this nice new building or whatever, and it's like been maintained for as long as it has. But then rent control comes in, and it's good for a while, and it's good for a little more while, and a little more while, and then
but a little less so.
And then 20 years later, you look around, and you're like, this place is a shithole. Why isn't anybody fixing this place up? Oh, it's because I'm paying 25 cents in rent. Oh, okay.
All hail our rightful ruler, King Candy.
Yeah, King Candy.
Now, he's buying everyone's affection by giving away candy, and he's got this race that he runs nightly to get people on the roster for the next day's entertainment. So it's a pay-to-play situation. That's why Silverman is stealing the metal from Ralph to be able to enter this tournament, because it's revealed later, and we spoil movies. We wreck movies all the time. We're going to wreck it. She was the cabinet. She was the feature on the cabinet of the game. She was supplanted by King Candy, who was actually Turbo from another game. Spoilers all around, who got jealous of the competitors coming in who are faster, better, sleeker, pulling away his thunder. So he went over to the other game and screwed it up. So then his game and the new game got sent out as out of order games, but he escaped and supplanted her in Candy or Sugar Rush, right? Sugar Rush, what it's called, and went in and reprogrammed people, erased their memories, like Men in Black style. I mean, this is essentially, he took over and then took over their education program, indoctrinated everyone, implanted false memories, all this other bullshit to get people to believe that he was the rightful, like, lead character in this game.
Yeah. And then at one point he goes, the hardest part of being a king is doing what's right, no matter what. And that's always a funny line, because that would be impossible for a king to do. Regardless of what you think a king is actually somebody who rules by force. And it's actually impossible for them to do the right thing other than, abdicate and declare it all a sham anyway.
Yeah. Now, what did you think of his argument? And we're sort of skipping around a little bit, but Silverman's a glitch. And his point is that if she wins a race, then it will break the game, right? And then they'll shut the game down and she can't leave, so she'll die.
Right. And that was ultimately BS, because he was just acting out of self-preservation.
Right. But it is a compelling argument, and Ralph bought it.
He bought it because he's a moron, as we've said throughout this entire movie. Now, I agree that that's a somewhat compelling argument. Like when it was originally stated, I was like, okay, that makes some sense. Like if you're going to play a game and it's all glitching out, and they showed it earlier. They showed some kind of glitchy stuff going on with Ralph's game, Fix It Felix. And they're like, oh, this game needs to be serviced or whatever. We're going to put this sign saying it's out of order. That's somewhat to the truth, but I think it's more likely if the glitch can be exploited. I mean, there are people who play video games that you can only glitch. There are speedrunners who can play a game of Super Mario Brothers in 10, 15 minutes. Maybe it's more than that. It's less than that. Maybe it's more like 5 minutes or something like that, because they institute glitches. There are hackers,
go through walls
and
whatnot.
Yeah, they do wall hacks and, weird jumps, and they get outside of the game and exploit, glitches. And they love that. There's a whole group of gamers who just live to exploit glitches and determine what the limits of the software are and to break them and, get some new record on how quickly they can beat that game. So I thought it was a compelling argument to a certain extent, depending on the level of the glitch. If the glitching ruined the game to the point which the game was unplayable, okay. But if it's just a competitive advantage where you can glitch through walls, then are you kidding me? Everyone's going to pick that character every time.
Right, because at the end, she maintains her glitch ability and she uses it to her advantage in the races.
Right. And then the human players doing that do the exact same thing at the very end also.
Right. Now, before she gets Ralph to break into the bakery to make the new car, she had already built a car previously, and she was able to enter the race, or was attempting to enter the race, and all of the other bratty little candy characters were being mean to her, making fun of her disability, right? Her glitching, ostracizing her, being little bitches to her. I know, language, right? Language. And they assault her and destroy her property. And this just reminded me of high school girls,
Yeah, it was a brutal batch of bullying, and it kind of reminded me of, I don't know if the movie was trying to be a little SJWE and showing that these people are bullying her just because she's different and she didn't choose to be born a glitch and she's, a perfectly good person, and how dare they. I was with you in that's her property. They have no right to destroy that. You can say what you want, but don't attack me. But yeah, it's absolutely bullying and an assault on her private property for sure. It's aggression. And it is, true justice if they are held to account for that.
All right, another one I want to talk about a little bit is the donut cops. They're basically chasing Ralph around saying, we're not going to hurt you, you little freak. Or they say that to Silverman. And they're liars, because they beat Ralph before there's any interaction, right? They don't even talk to Ralph. They just start beating him up. It's like when people show up to, police show up at a house and just shoot the dog first thing, even if it's the wrong house.
Right.
And then they tase him. They tase Ralph. It reminded me of the Don't Tase Me, Bro from the John Kerry speech 15 years ago.
Right. No, I did appreciate that. I mean, if you're going to, if you're on the left, you tend to look at the cops as out of control, crazy people, maybe racists. And if you're on the right, maybe you tend to defend them a little bit too much. And I can, see both arguments. I tend to fall on the side of cops are out of control, and they're immorally enforcing immoral laws. Is where
even if, like Stalin, they believe they're doing the right thing.
Right. Like when we talk to Mance, and he says, like, I have no sympathy for order takers that, follow immoral orders. I mean, they're just, I can't sympathize with you. And you can't just say, hey, I'm just following orders. Nuremberg defense doesn't work on me.
Even with all the indoctrination and propaganda.
Even with all the indoctrination, you are still an adult. You still have self-ownership. You have the hopefully mental capacity of an adult.
Ralph does not.
And Ralph does not, but you should, as an order taker, should recognize that you are performing immoral actions and course correct that ass immediately.
Right, but I would imagine that most people do not. I mean, most people are blue-pilled, right? Like, most people don't see the state for the violence that it is.
And they got paychecks that require them not to see that.
Right, exactly. And education systems that are put in place to reinforce the goodness of the state. They've got media, entertainment, news, all of these things that reinforce the goodness of the state. History books are all about the goodness of the state for the most part. I find it difficult to break out of that and see it for what it is. I think it's a rare person that can do that.
I agree. I agree.
It's unfortunate. And so that gives me a little bit of sympathy towards, they know not what they do is evil. They do it anyway, thinking that it's good. And I think it's Larkin who says, like, some of the most horrific atrocities are people who have good intentions and think they're doing the good thing, the right thing.
Right. Like Stalin thought he was doing the right thing. And sure, he had to kill tens of millions, but, he's doing the right thing.
Right. And I think you've made this argument in the past where he's really just giving advice to people. I mean, they're orders, but people can disobey orders. But it's the people who are the order followers doing these things that are actually committing the acts themselves.
Right. If Hitler wasn't the chancellor of Germany, if people didn't revere the position, the office, the badge, he's just some guy shouting at people. And then what? And then you don't have any of these problems. You're just like, you're a crazy person. Why do I have to follow you? Why should I do what you say? I own myself. Fuck off.
Yeah, but I do think it takes some effort to get to that point, to be able to see it from the perspective of right and wrong and what really is right and wrong. Like, what are
we taught it when we're 2 years old.
Right, but then ever since then
right? We're propagated. Yeah.
It gets obscured. Yeah.
Propagandized. Yeah.
So, it's a selfish man who's a mangy dog chasing a cautionary tale, Robert.
What the hell? What was that?
That's a line from the Jane Lynch character. I thought it was pretty clever because she's mixing 2 or 3 metaphors together.
Nice. I did enjoy the Jane Lynch character. She was pretty good.
Yeah, she's
and the
pretty
Jack
badass.
Breyer character, McBrayer, he's pretty good too.
Yeah, no, I had a question about him and her, actually.
Ooh.
So when they're stuck in the Laffy Taffy and the taffy vines are coming down
they're in the quicksand, you mean?
Yeah, the quicksand, and the Laffy Taffy's coming down to, when they think something's funny, they get closer and closer.
Yeah.
And it's physical violence that apparently they find funny.
Even though they have no eyeballs. Yes.
Well, just disregard that. This is it's part of the movie. But I found it as a father watching with a 3 and a 5-year-old, I was like, this is not good. I don't want it to be celebrated that punching someone in the face is funny and the thing to do. And so that really bothered me a little bit. And then when they get out of that, Jack McBrayer falls in love with her, right? Or she falls in love with him because he's looking all, what's the word? Noble or whatever, heroic for saving her.
Yeah.
With his quick wit.
He's carrying her and they're flying through the air.
Right. But then she randomly fires her gun in the air to snap him out of it or snap her out of it or something. And that made me think that is, you had made reference to the cops were viewed through sort of a leftist lens in this movie, where they're sort of out of control and beat people, tase people, whatever, before any questions or any other interaction. I felt like they were doing that with Jane Lynch as any gun owner. Gun owners are off the handle. They'll just shoot their gun wildly in the air and have no regard for anyone else.
That didn't occur to me, but I could see why you would think that for sure. Yeah. I mean, she ends up saving the day with her gun, not necessarily saving the whole day, but she saves some lives with that gun.
All right, yeah, when they're trying to fend off the what are they called again?
Thingamajigs. I don't know. The bugs.
The bugs. We're gonna do bugs again when we do Starship Troopers. That's gonna be a good one. We're doing our part.
We are. We're doing our part.
Yeah, so that'll be coming at you in a couple of weeks here. There was one other thing I wanted to bring up that's related to this.
Without a princess, who's going to lead us?
Oh yeah, that's the key question at the end there. Oh, so when Ralph won the Hero's Duty Medal, they gave him this long speech about history will long revere your courage and sacrifice, blah blah blah. You know, this like bunch of bullshit. And Jane Lynch buys into all of that, right? It's all the patriotism, rah rah rah, total indoctrination stuff.
Yeah, well, she's a gunnery sergeant or whatever she is.
Yeah, true enough. What else do we have here? I got police are King Candy's muscle, so his enforcers. So similar to what you said, King Candy can't do much of it on his own, but only through having his enforcement arm, these order followers, that he can actually initiate or perpetrate physical violence against others.
Right. Now, I don't know how much his reprogramming went into their own will or their own self, ownership or what have you. I can't say. Or are they just believing that they need to be ruled and therefore we're going to follow these orders as lickspittles? I don't know.
No, up, down, left, right, BA, select, start.
Just BA, start, not select. But yes, the Konami code was in there. I appreciated that. That was fun.
Yeah, that was pretty badass. Get 33 lives or something like that.
What did you think of Ralph torturing that little sour green ball guy?
All right, refresh me on that. I don't quite recall it.
So this is towards the end, and Ralph finds the green ball guy. He's like the butler or whatever.
The heralder or whatever, like the announcer.
Yeah, and he starts asking them questions, and the green ball guy is like, I'm not going to tell you. And so he sticks him in his mouth, like he's threatening to eat him. He's like, how many licks would it take to get to the center of you?
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, man, that's a tough one because, I mean, he is a gobstopper or a now and later or whatever you call him. Whatchamacallit? Gobstopper? Yeah. Never any gobstopper, maybe?
Maybe. I don't know. Some kind of sour ball, candy ball, something.
I mean, that's like his purpose is to be eaten.
He wasn't happy about it, so I don't think it was.
But he was also, he trapped Fix-It Felix.
Yes, he did.
So he was an enforcer for the king. So, I mean, he's the bad guy. He's one of the bad guys doing the bad stuff.
Right. So are you giving Ralph a pass on that? It's like whatever you got to do to get the information out of him?
Well, I mean, I don't think torture is an effective extraction method. But, in the case of this movie, sure, I'll give him a pass. I mean, he's done a bunch of bad stuff, for sure.
Yeah. He's not a perfect protagonist in this movie at all.
But he really just wants to not be alone, right? I mean, he just wants community and friendship, and he's doing whatever he can to get it.
Right, but he never learns, all the things he's doing, he's just given a pass for doing. At no point is he ever told what he's doing is wrong, and at no point does he ever go, oh yeah, the way I was doing, how I chose to go about doing this, was wrong. He's like, the way to win this and the way I'm going to get accolades is to wreck things. And that's how he ultimately saves everybody, is by wrecking the Mentos volcano.
See, I'm going to disagree because I think he does come to a realization after he destroys Vanellope's car and then goes back to Niceland and everyone has moved out because Felix has gone looking for Ralph because Ralph went turbo. I think he does come to the realization that he did do the wrong thing, that a lot of people's lives were irreparably, changed as a result of his actions and people following up trying to find him.
Well, I would agree that he learned that lesson, that he left his arcade game to abandon his other people in his arcade game, and that might have been not great.
Yeah, and what was the turn that got him to like Vanellope then? Because he threw his medal at the screen, and then he had the little one that she had made for him that said "My Hero." And when my daughter, my 5-year-old, saw him throw the first one and then pull out the second one, she's like, "Oh no, don't throw that one. Your friend made that one."
Aww,
that made me tear up a little bit. That jerked some tears for me, but that's because it's my kid.
Well, so you mean why he started liking her in the first place is when he saw that she was getting bullied?
Well, yeah, but he went to Nice Town or Niceville and then decided to go back to help Vanellope. So what was the thing that made him decide to go back?
Oh, yeah. Well, he saw her face was on the side of the
Oh, that's right.
arcade
Yeah.
cabinet.
So he saw that she had been wronged.
Right.
She had been displaced.
She wasn't just a glitch. She was supposed to be in that game.
She had been removed from her property by King Candy,
Much like he had been.
Eminent Domain.
Yeah, maybe he recognized a fellow traveler there, so he had to help her out.
All right. So yeah, she was the rightful owner. And if she wins, she actually would fix the glitch.
She would fix the glitch, but then she would go on to be the princess and rule over everybody. But then kind of not.
Right.
She kind of abdicates almost immediately.
Well, it's weird because as soon as she's the ruler, she makes this joke about threatening to execute everyone.
Yes.
Which, okay, it's a joke, but they think you're serious about threatening to murder them. So how much of a joke is that?
A hilarious joke, apparently. I don't know.
And then, of course, they do say, as you mentioned earlier, without a princess, who will lead us? And she says something to the effect of, I'm thinking something like a constitutional democracy. And my thought was, what the fuck is that?
Right.
You know, is this like an attempt to influence viewers into thinking that that is the form of government that is in the United States? Because everyone says our democracy, right? And everyone knows there's a constitution, but they don't seem to understand like the mechanisms by which they're purported to like offset each other and prevent tyranny and all these things. And, you know, how effective that's been is certainly up for debate. I would say it hasn't been very effective, but going to this direct democracy model, which seems to be what the left talks about ceaselessly, seems to be what's being supported here.
It is, for sure. And not only that, but they also, and this gets done all the time, is they conflate ruler with leader and leader with ruler. So when they ask, well, who's going to lead us? They make it seem like, well, who's just going to show us the way? Who's going to be the great big shining beacon and like suggest things to us as to what we should do? And not instead, we're going to make the rules and the laws. And if you don't obey, we're going to kill you. There's a big difference. There's a huge difference between being a leader, like somebody who leads us in this calisthenics program, versus a ruler who rules and dominates you and punishes you if you don't do what they say.
And this is a cart before the horse situation, because a lot of people think the government is necessary for society to exist. But no, society, voluntary interactions among people precedes government. You know, so when they ask who will lead us, I change the question in my mind to how will we reproduce without rape? And her suggestion is, oh, we'll just try a different position.
Yeah, we'll just have a different form. It's going to be totally different. Totes, guys. And I know it's a kid's movie and whatever, but yeah, that kind of throwaway line did really bug me.
Right. And of course, the right answer is that the individuals ought rule themselves.
Right. And that would have been a much better answer. What do you need a ruler? We're just racers on a racetrack. What do you need to be told to do? I don't know.
All right. So the last note I have is that Ralph finally realizes at the end that he doesn't need a medal to tell him that he's a good guy. And he's right. You know, so his whole quest to get this medal to prove to have some sort of symbol that represents being a good guy is a false quest, you know, an unnecessary quest. And I can't hear you. All right. A little bit of technical difficulties, everyone. We'll be back in just a moment when Robert figures this out. This is the live stream. And I think he can hear me, right? Yeah, thumbs up. You can hear me, but I cannot hear you. Maybe try there. Yep, I can hear you now.
You can?
Yes.
I did not do anything. I muted and unmuted the microphone, which shouldn't have done anything, but okay.
It's a glitch. It's been
glitched.
All right, so he doesn't need a medal to tell him he's the good guy. That's my final note on this one, and take it away. We go into some final summaries and reviews in a moment.
Okay, yeah, so he doesn't need a medal, which seemed to be a fairly obvious character arc for him, since his original quest was fairly ridiculous and childish. Hey, I need this medal to prove that I'm a good guy. Clearly, it seems like, oh, I guess I don't need that. So at least he did learn something, but when it's so obviously dumb, it's kind of eye-rolling a little bit. But it's still a decent movie. I thought the acting was pretty good. The voices were all pretty good. The animation was fine. The storyline wasn't terrible. You know, anytime you have two characters who shouldn't be friends and become friends, is even as obvious as the writing seemed to be for me, it still hit all the right notes, even if it was a little bit paint by numbers. So I really enjoyed the nostalgia. All the references were fun and cute. It was kind of clever the way they kind of blended it all, and it was a unique story, even if it was a fairly paint by the number story. I mean, you know, the setting was unique in that sense. But overall, Not my favorite Disney movie, not my favorite Pixar. I'm glad we did it. It was good enough for this show. It had some interesting things to talk about. I'm glad we could bring some good, solid economics to the discussion. So I'm going to give this movie a 6.8. Not the best, but not the worst. Just about average, just maybe a little bit above average. So I'm hearing that the Wreck-It Ralph 2 reviews are really strong, but those are also early critic reviews, and they always pick out the best possible, things to say about a movie. So who knows?
All right, 6.8. I think I'm going to go a little bit higher. And it might be because, I watched this movie maybe 6 months ago, and then again just the other day in preparation for this show, and watched it with the kids, and they really resonated with it, and that was fun to see. Now, they probably didn't have, the same, like the bank of history for that nostalgic factor to hit, but they were on like the friendship angle and the ostracism stuff, and then the social interaction and the wanting to belong as part of the Ralph story, and that really hit with them. So and I think that plays pretty well. It shows how ostracism is a very powerful, social functions are very, very strong. I think that the animation was beautiful, the voice acting is great. I really enjoy John C. Reilly. The movie just overall is quite good, and I'm going to go with an 8.1 on this thing. I actually am interested in seeing Wreck-It Ralph 2, though I'm going to wait till after it's out of theaters because we're cheap over in this household. But because we watched this movie, I actually got so much nostalgia, and because it's Black Friday coming up here, or just passed as we are releasing the show, but recording it before Black Friday, I just confused myself. There was a deal on a PlayStation 4, so I picked one of those bad boys up for the kids, and by that I mean for me. So, but there's a Paw Patrol game that they're going to play, and there's a Cars, like Pixar, Cars 3 racing game, because they like the Cars movies as well. We did Cars a ways back on this episode, where we also talked about Eminent Domain, as we mentioned earlier. So yeah, pick that bad boy up. $199. Are you out of your mind? With the Spider-Man game, which gets rave reviews. And so if that deal is still available, check it out via our Amazon links on our site at lastnighters.com. Show notes and more, lastnighters.com/47. So this has been our episode on Wreck-It Ralph, and I think we're going to come at you next week with a bit of a treat. We are going to have the Anarchist Mom, who will be launching a podcast soon. No pressure, Anarchist Mom, but she wants to talk about one of her favorite movies, The Lord of the Rings, and we're going to cover the trilogy in an episode next week. So that will be a lot of fun. Lord of the Rings on The Last Nighters next week with Anarchist Mom. So any final comments, Robert, before we move on down the road?
You got wrecked, Daniel. 8 point. What did you give it? 8 point something earlier?
8.1 on that Richter scale.
8.1 on the IMDb's. Good job. No, it's you're not totally wrong. I mean, I just imagine watching it with your daughters would really evoke some more positive feels than I probably did. So, right on. I can believe that. Thanks for listening, everybody, to another episode of The Last Nighters. It's been my pleasure speaking with you, and we'll catch you out on the next episode. If you want to check out some teas, buy some teas on TeePublic. Go to tpublic.com/Trubster for some, if you want to support the show, and get yourself some styling gear to wear for the holidays, or make some gifts. Do that. That'd be great. Keep the lights on. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, we're doing that gifting time. So that's tpublic.com/Trubster, TRUBBSTER. And we will have that on the show notes page and more. We also have a deals page, lastnighters.com/deals. So check that out for the Cyber Monday deals. They're still sticking around. I'll even put the link to Trubster at TeePublic on there as well. So check it out. And I will say good night from last night. Thanks for joining us, everyone.